Well, who were the first people to appear on Channel 7 in Perth? We'll let them introduce themselves.
Well, Coralie and I are about as closest to the originals as you'll get here at Channel 7 in Perth, Western Australia. And after all these years, what is your most exciting experience?
Well, looking back over 40 years, I must say it was the opening night of the station, Lloyd. We were all very nervous and full of tension, but we got the station open and we were on our way.
And of course, Coralie and I had the distinction of being the first two live faces on television in Western Australia. And on that opening night, a new era began for all of us, as for the very first time, we saw world events beamed into our own homes.
The evening TV news was popular too. The first news editor at TVW was Darcy Farrell. He directed the news, reporting with great distinction over many years.
A fire engine siren or an ambulance horn, they'd chase it.
Darcy Farrell, one of the top newsmen of the day.
Absolutely. Still.
Still, that's true.
Still, he made our news. Darcy's the best newsman I've seen around for a long time. Very good indeed.
I didn't start there until May of 1961, but it was still part of the early crop. But ahead of me were people like Lloyd Lawson, David Farr, Jeff Walker, Vin Walsh doing the weather, and then a bit later on there were the two Garys, myself and Gary Meadows.
Yes.
I think that you'll find Gary Carville at the age of 18 was an understudy to Gary Meadows. Greg Pearce, of course, cut his teeth reading news at Channel 7. But I think probably, too, for their outstanding talent from a producer's point of view were Gary Meadows and Peter Waltham. In Meadows' case, he had a photographic memory and we didn't have auto cues, or idiot sheets, as they were known. And the people reading bulletins and presenters were called talking heads. Some of them were more intelligent than that, I'm pleased to say. But Meadows had a wonderful memory and he could memorise a page and go through it very successfully. And with a quick glance, he'd pre-read everything, of course, and he was quite outstanding. You could throw Meadows onto a 30-minute bulletin without any rehearsal whatsoever, and you'd think he'd been practicing it for a week. Waltham, very, very, very good, simply because he could hold a bulletin together. You're always going to have technical problems that sooner or later, whether the film breaks or whether tape doesn't work or whatever it might be. Well, Waltham knew exactly what to do. He could go to the standby material and keep it going for as long as you would need him to.
Included in the interview are Peter Cook and Gordon Masters, who's the Minister here for Labour and Industry. Will I keep talking? What would you like me to talk about? I can talk about anything.
In fact, during things like the Apollo program, which also we played an active part in, Waltham was terrific at filling, what we call filling, stretching, just talking and talking and talking, and he was terrific at it. Lloyd Lawson had a lovely voice, a very resonant, mellifluous voice. Of course, we've gone on to see some wonderful people. I think Susanna Carr has a fabulous voice. And I think that Rick Arden is probably one of the most popular, simply because he's not only a good reader, but he has a great appealing presence on camera.
Politicians often came to Perth to give us their political message and to ask for our vote. One of them was Bob Menzies. Darcy again.
Menzies was an overpowering personality, absolutely overpowering. If the interviewers today, he'd never be able to do today what he did in those ways, and the ways he dominated the media. He would dominate anyone. He was superb intellect, stronger, better than anyone we've probably had in terms of his presence. A world figure, if he had wanted to be. In Forest Place, we did a couple of election outside broadcasts where Menzies, nearing the end of his career, by the way, a man in his 70s, still could hold an audience. The crowd would pack down, 10,000 people would pack into Forest Place just to hear Menzies, and the way he would bounce off the interjectors just had to be seen to be believed. And he could destroy any interjector or even groups of interjectors.
To think that although you poor simple people have been voting for me for 15 years...
Robert Menzies was one of the world's great orators.
You've been voting for an utter fraud.
There were always people prepared to interject at Menzies, but they did it at their own risk.
Chap down here, clever fella, very clever chap. And who caused all this trouble with Malaysia and Indonesia? I said, well, I suppose I did. My name must be Sukarno.
To finish the news each night was, of course, the weather. Do you remember Jim Rings Bees given by TV weatherman Zen Walsh? Then, of course, there were the first of many girls to take up the weather chart pointer. Here's one I'm sure you'll remember, Children's Channel 7 hostess Trina Brown.
How did I get my wink, for instance? That was, you didn't get called to Mr. Treasurer's office unless you were in trouble. And one morning, I did the weather the first night, and I really had to prove that I could do it. And it didn't seem the way in those days to tell you you'd done a good job. It was if you hadn't. So the next morning, I had a memo on my desk to go to Brian Treasurer's office. And when I got there, I walked in and he said, "Good morning." I said, "Good morning." He said, "Did you wink on television last night?" Now, it's something I have done all my life. I just say, "G'day," and the wink comes. And I said, "I don't know, Mr. Treasurer." He said, "Well, you did, and you will from this night on, because the switchboard lit up." And so that's how, and then, of course, I was nervous, thinking, did I wink? But that's how it happened. So it wasn't anything contrived, it was just a natural happening.